Hello, I'm sick. Because I'm sick, I'm very unproductive. And because I was unproductive today, I ended up watching the entire America's Next Top Model documentary series on Netflix. And I have a lot to say about it, so consider this my flu game. I have a secret that might be a little groundbreaking for all of you to hear, but America's Next Top Model is problematic.
As a model, you need to tell people when you're past your limit. It wasn't just that she was cold. It wasn't just that her teeth were chattering. She had reached the moment of hypothermia.
How are the pictures, baby?
They look good.
Goes to the individual, whether you're a working mother, a young girl.
She's got the best body here.
She needs to lose 5 to 10 pounds a head.
They're all fat. The entire room is fat. I'm fat. You're all fat.
This is a topic that has been dissected to death that ultimately boils down to, wow, beauty standards were messed up in the early 2000s. Wow, reality TV was messed up in the early 2000s. Holy shit, everyone was so racist in the early 2000s.
Now there's a twist. We are actually going to switch your ethnicities. Kenya, Korean. Noelle, we're making you into a traditionally African woman with a head wrap and everything.
So why are we talking about this today? Well, Netflix just put out a new 3-part documentary series about the making of the show called Reality Check, Inside America's Next Top Model. The documentary not only features interviews with previous contestants, but also most notably confessionals with the masterminds behind the show, including executive producer Ken Mock, Nigel Barker, the Jays, and Tyra Banks herself. And for what it's worth, because I think the context is important, Tyra Banks allegedly did not have any creative control over the final product, and we'll get into why, but it kind of shows. I typically don't love these Netflix docuseries. I think they are all unnecessarily long and usually a little too self-congratulatory, especially if the conceit is like, look at this successful thing that was a little fucked up behind the scenes, you know? And this one was no exception to that. I didn't find the production to be particularly spectacular, and there was a lot of filler nonsense to pad out the 3-episode runtime, but I did find potential value in the fact that for the first time, it seemed like a lot of the people involved in this pop culture phenomenon, specifically Tyra herself, would be confronted about these issues head on. What I actually appreciated about this documentary was how they paired contestant interviews with moments from the show to get their perspective on the record. For example, we heard from Kenya, who was routinely criticized for gaining weight on the show, being forced to portray the sin of gluttony during a 7 Deadly Sins challenge, having to dress up as an elephant for another challenge, and how she was maliciously edited to be shown constantly eating and snacking. Or Danny, who was forced to close the gap in her teeth to stay in the competition, and admitted that she was essentially blacklisted from the industry due to her work on Top Model, and that Tyra told her that she knew that was going to be the case years later. I like that these narratives were prominently featured in the documentary because in some ways it feels like America's Next Top Model sort of takes place in this alternate reality where girls are constantly subjected to weird-ass humiliation rituals, and then if they push back on it even a little bit, they're perceived as vapid or unintelligent or difficult to work with. And so credit where credit is due, the documentary gave them the space to share their truth and acknowledge that these girls weren't crazy and that their struggles and the trauma they went through were valid. And it was nice seeing that in the sense that the documentary didn't poke fun at any of these moments at all. They took them very seriously. All the while, there's this sort of meta-narrative happening in the background with interviews from the judges and producers and mentors as the show is getting more popular, and they're all feeling this pressure to up the ante with what they're doing. The photo shoots are getting more intense, and they're embracing the fear factor aspect of reality TV that was popular at the time, and it's just astonishing how none of these people are able to take accountability for any of these situations. When it came to the extreme photo shoots and makeovers and who would come up with these ideas, they'd go, I don't know, creative was just getting out of hand, I guess, and I was there watching it happen. When they did the race swapping photo shoot, Jay Manuel was like, well, I was uncomfortable, but I still did it because Tyra said it would be fine. They showed Nigel Barker a clip of himself chastising Kenya for not speaking up on set about a man making her uncomfortable, and when he's watching this clip, he's just like, well, I wouldn't say that today, but I was just being realistic. And then Tyra basically says the same thing, and she's the most guilty of this consistently out of them all throughout the whole documentary. When asked about asking Danny to close the gap in her teeth, she goes, well, it's because there were agents telling me that they wouldn't book her with the gap. When Janice Dickinson is being a huge cunt and fat-shaming the girls, Tyra's just like, well, that bothered me. I didn't do anything about it, but it bothered me a little bit. You know, what do you want me, the executive producer of the show, to do? In the first episode of the doc, they make this whole big moment out of Tyra allegedly arguing with Les Moonves, who was the head of CBS and UPN at the time, about how he didn't want a Latina girl cast on the first season of the show, and apparently she was getting in his face and screaming at him, and you'd think that sentence would end with, and then the Latina girl was cast on the show. But no, she was like, well, I lost that fight, so we had to find someone else. And it's like, do you want a cookie? I don't know. At points, Tyra does offer the occasional apology to specific girls when prompted about certain incidents, but for the most part, when it comes to Tyra or Ken Mock or whoever, no one actually takes any accountability for any of the shit that happened on this set. It was always somebody else's fault, or that they were meeting some intangible demand given to them, some mandate from heaven for them to continue on with this goofy-ass, unprofessional clown show. And the thing is that I do not feel bad for one single person involved in producing this show. None of these people are victims of any system or exterior mechanism of evil forcing them to do any of this beyond their own needs and wants to chase ratings and fame and make sensationalized television moments. So all of this is pretty bad, but it's all pretty well-known stuff within the America's Next Top Model pantheon, and so seeing all of these people do like a round robin of not taking any accountability for it makes a ton of sense. A lot of them seemed like their entire purpose for sitting down and doing this documentary was to come on and be like, well, it's fucked up, and I acknowledge that it's fucked up, but it wasn't my fault. Which is bad on its own, but then they admit to filming a rape.
You had sex? Oh my god! Oh, you've changed. You're not Shandy.
So, everyone has seen this clip from America's Next Top Model Cycle 2 of Shandy, a contestant on the show, admitting to cheating on her boyfriend while on a photo shoot in Milan, and him chastising her for doing so. What we learn in this documentary, which features personal testimony from Shandy, is that according to her, this is not actually what happened. Shandy was drunk and nearly unconscious and was assaulted in the shower. Not only that, but the America's Next Top Model camera crew filmed the entire thing. And the justification that they give for filming it all was that they told the cast that they would be filmed all the time, and they found it against the code of reality TV or whatever to, do any meaningful intervention here. Then they edited it to make it seem like the encounter was consensual and that Shandy just got drunk and cheated, and had Tyra lecture the remaining contestants with some pseudo bullshit nonsense about how cheating is bad, when the reality was that she got assaulted. She didn't even remember having sex with this man, and then after all of this, when she tried to make it work with her boyfriend after the show, people would come up to her on the street and call her a cheating whore, which caused them to break up. And now she's back working at the Walgreens she worked at before she got on the show and started her modeling career. The craziest thing is that after Shandy explains this, all of the production members, including Tyra and Ken Mock, are interviewed about it, and they all kind of just brush past it, and they don't take accountability. They go, oh, well, that was production. Like, that was supposed to be somebody else's job to take care of. Like, should we film that? Like, maybe not, but, like, it happened, and it is what it is. And then they go, but look at what a big success we are. We have multiple international spin-offs. We're getting parodied on SNL, and it's like, motherfucker, you all just admitted to filming a rape and not intervening. What the fuck is going on here? Not to be the friend that's too woke, and like, tell me if I'm off base on this, you know what I mean? It's just, I'm making connections in my sick little brain here, but like, I'm starting to think that on a deep and pervasive level in every, faction of society as we know it, from our politics to the pop culture that we consume, everyone just kind of hates women and has a serious disdain for young women and the choices that they make or refuse to make under patriarchy. It almost just seems like we have a society-wide disregard for any time a woman is subjected to harm in this way, and we find a way to blame them for it. I don't know what's been giving me that hunch lately, like what's causing me to make this connection that's very serious based on a documentary that I just watched about a reality show from the early 2000s, you know, like I don't know what it could be, but like, you know, it's like I don't know.
Well,
Any
look,
chance?
I'll never say no, and we will always investigate any evidence of misconduct. But as you know, it is not a crime to party with Mr. Epstein.
And I realize this is disgusting. I'm definitely not trying to make an excuse for this. I'm just giving you facts. That he wasn't into like 8-year-olds, but he liked the very young teen types.
She's a young woman. I don't think I've ever seen you smile. I've known you for 10 years. I don't think I've ever seen a smile in your face.
I'm asking you about survivors.
You know why?
of Jeffrey
You know why
Epstein's
you're not
Mr.
smiling?
President.
Because you know you're not telling the truth.
I think a lot about how society at large has never taken women's pain quite seriously on any level. How if you are not conventionally attractive, you are invisible and must suffer in silence at the hands of the worst people alive, and if you are conventionally attractive, you are hypervisible to the point that you are prey to the worst people alive. And for some reason, when that pain finally gets exposed to the world in a way that is unbecoming, the people who are responsible, those people, they get to just wave it away and go, well, I didn't know that was happening. Or, if this happened today, I would have acted differently. And it's like, well, why didn't you act differently then? You had every opportunity to do the right thing and you didn't. Why am I supposed to think better of you now just because you would do something differently now? And I'm not saying that people can't grow and change, but this is not, you know, apologizing for bullying on the playground. This is knowingly mischaracterizing a crime. I'm pretty sure people knew not to do that in 2004. And I just really fucking hate this idea, and I think this happened a lot during this era where because these young, impressionable girls sort of willingly put themselves in this environment that they deserve whatever happened to them. They willingly subjected themselves to this situation, and so they have to pay the price in exchange for being exposed to fame. Because a lot of the girls featured in this documentary came from nothing and were using reality TV as their ticket out of whatever situation they were in. Meanwhile, Tyra Banks and Ken Mock and everyone else should have protected these women. They had the responsibility to do so, and they either failed to do that or didn't even care to try in the first place. And this is not to say that Tyra Banks has not experienced similar discrimination and mistreatment as a black woman in the fashion industry. I'm sure she has, and according to her own testimony in this documentary, that's part of what inspired her to create the show in the first place. But at a certain point, I lose any sympathy because all she did in this documentary is make excuses for the pain and prejudice that she knowingly inflicted on other people who were once in her position. And the fact that this documentary ends with her going, "You have no idea what I'm planning for cycle 25? Hello, I don't even want to know what you're planning for your next ice cream flavor, Tyra. Jesus Christ."
I feel like I'm going crazy. It's like I don't sleep. These ideas just keep coming in my head. And it's just like, bam, wake me up. And then this one came to me. Hot ice cream. Silky ice cream that you can drink. And no, I'm not talking about a latte. I'm not talking about hot chocolate that has flavors. I'm talking about hot ice cream. Innovation that took me over a year to get right. You're going to be able to taste it.
The last episode of the documentary is more about the aftermath of the show in its most popular iteration and how Tyra and Ken were allegedly pressured by the network to fire the Jays and Nigel, which Tyra once again makes excuses for. It's made clear that there is a bit of bad blood between Tyra and Jay Manuel in particular, but that all of the judges have had a strained relationship with Tyra over the years for one reason or another. One of the last revelations of this episode is that Miss J had a stroke that caused him to be unable to walk, and that Tyra hadn't made it a point to visit him in the hospital or at any point during his recovery journey. Meanwhile, the documentary crew asks her to speak about her relationship with the other Jay, and that's basically the only thing that she refuses to comment on directly at all. I'm not surprised by any of this necessarily, but I think it just speaks to how everyone featured in this documentary is just trying to clear their name and get out of their own way, and it just makes them all end up looking significantly worse. So what have we learned here today? I don't know. I think it's that in particular circumstances, you could just say that stuff wasn't your fault, and that if a specific situation happened today, you would do or say something differently with no real means of accountability or even apologizing to the people that you've harmed. And then it's fine. And then it's like totally fine. I think that is the lesson that we should all take away from this episode about this documentary. Hell yeah. Thanks for watching, everyone. Everything is so good. Everything is so awesome. I love being alive. Bye!